got nothing in my brain. That's what people say. Mm-mm. That's what people say. Mm-mm. I go on too many dates, but I can't make them stay.
Well, you wouldn't want Jack the Ripper to stay, though.
I mean, it depends.
I just want to remind you that Johnny Depp was not Jack the Ripper, okay? He was Bilbo Baggins. No, I'm not wrong. Bilbo Baggins was Jack the Ripper.
I don't know.
No, he was. The actor in From Hell, it's the same guy. Look it up. Look it up if you think I'm wrong.
I think you're wrong.
Yeah, you just want me to be wrong. This is water, not vodka, because tomorrow is a school day and I am responsible.
Oh, so see, I'm off.
Then you need to drink all the vodkas.
I'm just drinking some wine.
Because you're a classy girl. Well, I liked our new intro. That was fun.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, you know, like, stop pretending we're classy with the Mozart shit and let's...
Yeah, I mean, let's be real. That description sounds like me. I don't know if it sounds like you, but it sounds like me.
Making anyone stay. No, that is like me. Also, being a dork in ballet class is like me, shamefully.
I like how with that music video, everybody was like, oh, Taylor is appropriating all this stuff. And I'm just like, chill out.
Oh, no, man. I mean, she's in high school. The girl is homeschooled, you know? I mean, I remember going through all the stages of middle school and high school. I remember my sad, lamented efforts to look all chola with the overplucked eyebrows and the heavy outlined lips that I didn't fill in because I thought I was so awesome. Stop looking at me like that. It was a brief period.
I don't really know what to say to that. You know what I did? I went for the whole, like, low-key emo look. Like, I wasn't emo, but I wanted to be, like, alternative, I guess.
You were
but I couldn't,
Winona Ryder?
No, I couldn't pull it off.
I bet you looked like Winona Ryder from Beetlejuice.
That would have been awesome. I was more like, you know, you're listening to All American Rejects and Brand New and Dashboard Confessional, and you know you get the new coolest top from Hot Topic, and you wear your Converse sneakers, and you think you're hot shit.
You didn't make anything homemade. How dare you, poser?
No, I went to Hot Topic, which is really funny when you look at the South Park episode that spooks it.
Per se.
Per se.
Per se. All right. So, welcome to our Jack the Ripper podcast.
Welcome.
Please contact us if you have any ideas, efforts to help solve this murder mystery that has been going on for hundreds of years now.
Guys, let's solve this.
Let us solve this. So you
Let us be the ones who solve it. God damn it.
Please give your conspiracy theories to me and Rita. You can contact her at GirlInTheMoon7 at Twitter and me at Rainey Scribbles. We both have SoundCloud and YouTube accounts at the Underbelly podcast for both, or you can email both of us at podcastunderbelly@gmail because someone took our Outlook name. Do you know, like, I tried to get us an Outlook and no, okay, I'm devolving here. Okay, so I just want to put this squarely on Rita's delicate shoulders that this is her fault. She has led me to this frickin' rabbit hole. You can listen to our previous podcast where she told me she was on a Jack the Ripper kick, and I said so pretentiously, how could you be on a Jack the Ripper kick? Okay, this is how you get to be on a Jack the Ripper kick.
Exactly. Well, you know, first of all, I love true crime. Like, I love true crime. I love the investigation.
Oh, then why don't you marry it? Oh, sorry.
What?
I said, why don't you marry it? I'm sorry. I'm a child.
Oh my God, what are you, 4?
Maybe I am.
I love Investigation Discovery. I love Dateline. I love 48 Hours Hard Evidence. I loved all of the Anne Rule's books. She's the woman, she's dead now, but she wrote a lot of true crime, and she was the woman who actually worked with Ted Bundy at the Suicide Prevention Hotline. So she wrote a lot of awesome books, and I just love it. So, like, I had read a Patricia Cornwall book about Jack the Ripper years and years and years ago, and that was what first sparked my interest in him. And I think serial killers are pretty fascinating, and I think it's fascinating to have the serial killer who killed a bunch of prostitutes in England, in the seedy part of London, years and years and years and years ago, and we're still talking about it. So I have been on the kick in the past, but what brought me on the kick recently was listening to the last podcast on the left. I think it's like 3 episodes about Jack the Ripper, and so it made me crazy again, and I started researching again and finding out new information. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I passed the contagion on to Rainey.
I will admit my first intro was less academic than yours. I did actually, this is amazing. I found a audiobook of the Patricia Cornwell Portrait of a Killer. Mm-hmm. And I've been listening to that, and it's really fascinating. I listen to all of the podcasts as well, and I will put a link in the description. And I did not send this to you, and I feel awful that I didn't, but I also watched Lindsay Ellis's Loose Cannon about Jack the Ripper and his presentation in the media, and it is a fascinating rabbit hole. It is a crazy, fascinating rabbit hole, and if you want to know more, and believe me, our little podcast is just going to be tip of the iceberg on everything. This is something that I think is absolutely amazing, and I don't know whether to thank Rita or blame her for something that was an obsession I did not know I needed.
Then, like, just as a side note about Patricia Cornwall, I think this speaks to the obsession that many people feel about Jack the Ripper. So, she writes other novels, fiction novels, but she was so obsessed with Jack the Ripper that she's written, I believe, 2 or 3 books about him, and she has sunk, like, a fortune into investigating and researching Jack the Ripper, which I think is kind of funny. And I can't judge because I understand. If I had the money, I probably would be doing a lot of research into it too.
Oh, believe me, I looked at how much a Ripper walk costs, and I was like, Rita, let's go. We can claim this for taxes.
I would 100% go. 100% go.
We can do it and just live off, I don't know, bangers and mash. I guess that's what they eat over there in England.
Fish and chips, darling. Fish and chips.
Okay, you get the fish and chips. I'll have the bangers and mash. I have the more fun name. Okay, so Rita has been kind enough to look at my insane rambles and hasn't called it just ramblings of an obsessed mind. So I guess we are going to start with the history of Jack the Ripper. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what we know factually about him, not the hot Johnny Depp adaptation, right?
Yeah, and the fact remains that we don't know a whole lot about him, unfortunately.
So what we do know, from August 7 to September 10 in 1888, somebody who was given the name Jack the Ripper from the press terrorized the Whitechapel district in London's East End. He killed at least 5 prostitutes, mutilated their bodies, and from the way they were mutilated, a lot of captured the idea of who this guy is. That he might be an educated man. Mm-hmm. That he
could be a doctor.
Yes.
Or there was also the other opposite side of the spectrum. He could just be a fisherman.
Yes.
Somebody who was used to carving meat, or somebody who's used to carving fish.
So someone with science, anatomy knowledge
of anatomy, especially human anatomy.
Yes, and he was never captured. This is important, never captured. And because of the combination of sex, because his victims were prostitutes, the violence,
the way it was done.
Yes, and especially the climate of the matter, and we'll go back to this. These crimes, the killer is one of the most famous in history.
Yep.
So, moving on. That's actually what we know. So let's give you a little more context of the location and the victims and what went down. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think Jack is famous or infamous, and he led this mystique happen to the Whitechapel district.
Yeah. Which it was reported, at least in some research, they didn't even have light there.
No.
It was completely dark. And it was really like just this shitty area that nobody really wanted to think about or talk about.
No, actually, oh my god, this is my rabbit hole. Rita, Charles Dickens, right? When he wrote his A Christmas Carol, and he led Ebenezer Scrooge, the Ghost of Christmas Present led Ebenezer Scrooge to see the crappiest shithole that existed in London. It was actually this district, Whitechapel.
That's what he had in mind.
No, that is literally what he described in his play.
Dirty and just crowded and filled with poor people with Cockney accents.
And not only that, because this was located in the East End near the Docklands, this just wasn't where the poor people lived. Oh no, this is also where the immigrants came in. So
ew.
So late 1800s, this is when a lot of people from Eastern Europe were escaping the poverty that was, and the cruel, tyrannical governments, the oppression. They would try to get out, and of course
that would be a lot of Jewish people as well.
Definitely.
Which plays into something later on that we'll talk about.
Also, where a lot of Irish came in, and these Irish people were also poor skilled, so a lot of them got jobs working as dock hands or like transporting meat, which also leads into the xenophobia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I know we're going to spend a lot of time theorizing on Jack the Ripper, but maybe we should spend some time on the victims, right?
Yes.
Okay, so a brief history of the Whitechapel victims is that we don't know exactly how many people he killed.
Which is crazy.
I know, right? Could you imagine if that happened today? It's like, well, there is a serial killer, but we don't know exactly how many, but we know there's going to be a lot.
Well, that's the interesting thing, though. They find that with a lot of serial killers, it goes one of two ways. They boast. So, they'll get caught for maybe one or two, and then they'll say that there's 4 confirmed or 5 confirmed, and then they'll say, but I've killed hundreds, but there's no actual evidence to back it up, and they don't talk more about it. Or it goes to the other extreme, where investigators suspect, based on that person's, MO and everything, that there had to have been more victims. And I think that ends up, if you do any research into a lot of those serial killers, especially the ones that existed over a large span of time, more often than not, it's unfortunate, but there's really never a definite number, which I just find wild. But for Jack the Ripper, why it's especially interesting about him is because of the way that he killed people. He didn't just slit a throat. He didn't just stab someone in the stomach. He didn't strangle anyone, just strangle them. It was a very methodical and involved murder.
Oh, yes.
And so you would think and that's why it's bizarre that it's left open that there could potentially be more victims. And personally, I think there probably were.
Well, we do know that the women he targeted were prostitutes, and the 5...
Which is historically the easiest and most common choice for serial killers because of the fact that they're transient and they're very likely to, be loners. They're not really living with a family. No one will miss them.
That's so sad, and I think it's so sad that it's still true today.
Right.
But the 5 confirmed murder victims known in Ripper lore, and God help me, I did not know there was such a thing as Ripper lore, are known as the canonical 5 victims. And yes, Rita, I did practice saying canonical all day today, so I wouldn't trip over it. Do I get applause?
Of course you do.
But they're known as the Canonical 5, and their names are Mary Nichols, and she was murdered on the 31st of August, 1888. Annie Chapman, murdered in the 8th of September, 1888. Elizabeth Stride, murdered on the 30th of September, 1888. Catherine Eddowes, murdered on the 30th of September, 1888. Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Meadows are particularly infamous in the Canonical 5 because they were the only known 2 that were murdered on the same night.
Mm-hmm.
And then, if you also love the From Hell movie with Johnny Depp, is the final victim, Mary Kelly, murdered on the 9th of November, 1888.
I just want to say that these are murders that were committed over a period of 4 months.
And really close to each other.
Very close to each other. And we know from method of murder that it was a very frenzied murder. Those that have done research, from behavioralist points of view, even say that it's a frenzied, determined, almost definitely psychotic manner. So that's why I think it's interesting, or that I wonder if there were more victims, because it seems like that whoever was doing this was frenzied and was on this rampage. It's 4 months doing this,
This is, God, I mean, and the level of violence in each murder. But,
right.
As I mentioned, there might have been some victims before these Canonical 5. And, whereas Rita loves investigation, discovery, and unsolved mysteries and all that, I also have my guilty pleasure, which is the TV show Criminal Minds. And one thing I learned from Criminal Minds is that it takes killers, especially serial killers, a while to develop their signature.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he had a few practice runs. You know, Rita?
And it always intensifies.
Always. Always, always, always. So, let me try. There are two women who they think maybe could have been previous victims of Jack. And the first one was Emma Smith, who died of her injuries in London Hospital on April 3rd, 1888. So this fits within the time frame, right?
I don't think she was a victim.
Well, I think that this is something to consider. That
Martha is more likely.
Oh, but
Emma, I struggle with.
But here, okay, so Emma was attacked, right? Mm-hmm. And she was brought to the hospital, and she told the doctor that she was attacked by a local gang. Now, I'm thinking here, maybe she said that she was attacked by a local gang because she didn't want to admit that she was a prostitute.
I don't know. I have a feeling that prostitutes, especially the way they dress then, it was just obvious that they were. I think that especially there, I think they knew how to identify a prostitute. I also think that prostitutes were so low and so drug or alcohol addicted that I don't even think that they would have thought to lie or care about lying. I don't know. There's not enough information that would be interesting to pursue more research into that. But I don't think that
Emma was?
No.
Okay. Let's move on to...
But there's a possibility. People do.
Maybe. But let's go to Martha Tabram, because I do agree that she definitely should be counted as a Ripper victim. So do you want to talk about her a little bit, or?
Sure. So a few months after that, on August 7th, 1888, the body of Martha Tabram was found in George Yard, a sordid thoroughfare that led, and for that matter still leads, off Whitechapel High Street. She had been subjected to a horrendous and very violent attack, in the course of which she suffered 39 frenzied stab wounds to her throat, chest, and abdomen that had to have been a highly personal attack. Knife attacks are always personal, and especially for a woman to be attacking her chest and her abdomen and her throat. Those are all very soft, vulnerable areas.
And especially around the chest area, like...
Yeah, exactly. And she was also referred to as Martha Turner, and I think there's a lot of evidence to back up the fact that she was probably a victim of Jack the Ripper. The case against her having, been a victim is a possibility, is because her throat wasn't cut. And she wasn't disemboweled, which we find later on for the other 5 victims. They all went through that. That was a signature part of the crime. Was that
especially if you compare it to the first known victim, Mary Nichols. Right.
And, but the thing is that the throat and the abdomen were targeted, and that was also part of the signature. And you know what? Going along with what we know about serial killers and that they become more intense and they, definitely increase, it becomes much more intense and violent as it goes on. Mm-hmm. It would make sense that Martha would have been the first victim. He was still trying things out. He was trying to see what he could get away with, and he found something that he liked. Who knows? 39 stab wounds to throat, chest, and abdomen is insane to me. So it's my belief. I really think she was definitely one of the first, and he was testing things out.
Yeah, so if we count Martha, then that would make it 6 known victims. Right. Because go ahead.
And then we go on to Mary Nichols.
Yes, and I think we see a combination of both the Emma Smith and the Martha Tabram victim. Both women were accosted when they were by themselves, right? Just like with Mary. Their bodies were both found in very public places, which is seen in all of the canonical 5. He wanted them to be found, right, Rita? Like, find me!
100%. That was an art to him. The way, he didn't just disembowel them and then fling their organs somewhere and not care. He, first of all, took organs. Mm-hmm. Second of all, the way that he would display them, they were meant to be viewed. He wanted people to see it. He wanted to scare people.
Definitely.
And I think it was a statement of how much he hated women and how much in particular he hated prostitutes.
And how little he thought of the police finding him. But what we see in both the Martha Tabram and the Mary Nichols case is the impact that Emma Smith's dying words gave to the police and the local authorities. Emma claimed that she had been attacked by a local gang, right? Mm-hmm. And her murder happened in April. Martha was murdered in August, and Mary was also murdered in August. But since Emma told the authorities that she had been attacked by a local gang, the subsequent 2 attacks on Martha and Mary were both seen as gang-related by the local authorities.
Yeah.
And they just believed it.
Such little stuff to go off of, too, that they had to grab at anything they could.
Well, also, it highlights how dangerous and how shitty Whitechapel was, that the authorities were like, yep, that's just what's going on in Whitechapel. There's gangs of people, like, mutilating and disemboweling women, you know.
Casually accepting that.
Just what happens.
Oh, man, another one.
What you gonna do?
They probably came from Ireland.
And are Jewish from Eastern Europe. Okay, let's talk about catching Jack. All right. Inspector Abberline is taking charge.
I'm so excited about this.
What?
Talking about him.
Okay. Was he a drug addicted clairvoyant, Rita? Was he?
That's what I wrote.
He can be if you want.
Like, I honestly, like, just not for nothing, and I know we're going to talk about From Hell later on, but From Hell takes this character, and Johnny Depp plays him, and Johnny Depp plays him as a drug addict, a drug addicted clairvoyant. And I just want to know, is that based on real life? Like, I want to know what they found out about him that led them to take such artistic liberty. Or was it maybe he really did see dead people?
He's Haley Joel Osment. Okay, so I don't know, in my sad research of Detective Abberline. Oh, Inspector Abberline. I'm sorry. I demoted him. But I do know that he had connections to the criminal underworld in the East End. So he actually knew the streets, knew the people, and the people trusted him, right?
Yeah. Everybody respected him. And just not for nothing, but think about the fact, that there's probably not that many police officers there, cops or whatever. And imagine having to be a police officer in Whitechapel. Like on one night, all of the crime that you see, that you probably are just like, listen, I'm not getting involved in this.
Looking away.
How serious is it? Let me do my serious meter. Is it on a 1 or is it a 10? Because I'm not doing anything unless it's above a 7.
Not only that, though, I mean, that I'm sure that played a really important part, but also what really helped is that the press liked him, because this is during a time where yellow journalism was just regular journalism. Sensationalism sold. I think they sold newspapers for like a penny back then. So everyone, basically the newspapers were our versions of Facebook and Twitter.
Right.
Maybe Snapchat.
I just have to say something, actually. I just have to say something. I want to make a bold statement right now.
Okay.
I actually no longer care who Jack the Ripper is. I just want to know if Abberline was a drug-addicted clairvoyant.
Okay, I still care who Jack the Ripper is.
All right, well, me too, fine. But was he, come on. Where did they get that from? I know we'll talk about it later, but Jesus Christ, this guy is, like, respected. He seems to be doing a pretty decent job.
Can we just say that Abberline in the From Hell movie didn't really seem that respected?
Hell no. They were like, oh God. Like, they were like, oh man, here he comes. Let me go fetch him from the opium den. But we find out, at least from reports, that he was really respected. He seemed to be doing a decent job in a really shitty area. He was respected by people. He was respected by the press, which was like Rainey was just saying, very sensational and very interested in selling stories, but they still respected him and the people. And I don't think that the people were very trusting people to start with. So the fact that he was well respected, and then this movie just makes him this drug addict that nobody's listening to and everybody's annoyed with.
And, well, he was a bit of a hipster. I would have been annoyed with him, too.
Johnny Depp, I can't. We'll get to it later, but I'm going to fucking slaughter him when I get a chance.
Yeah, but...
Not really. Not in person. Please. I don't need any police here. It's a joke.
But,
hyperbole. It's hyperbole.
But Abberline was put on the case because the press had gotten hold of what was going on, prostitutes getting throat slashed, right? Come on now. And, the local people were like, you know what? Fuck the police. I don't know why I suddenly became New World Order.
That's where the whole phrase came from. The police. From this time. It's great. 100% look it up. 100% true.
But they decided to get street justice, right? They created a vigilance committee in September. So by this time, in September, right, if you're following our timeline, Mary Nichols and Annie Chapman have been killed. And so by the 10th of September, 1888, local businessmen and tradesmen form this vigilance committee, and they elect a local businessman, George Lusk, to be their president, and they're going to do street justice because they didn't think the police could do it. And to be honest, during the late 1800s, no police officer wanted to patrol Whitechapel.
Right, and the numbers were very low. The officers were poorly trained. And think about how many criminal offenses they had to deal with daily. And can I just say another thing that actually really interests me? I think it's very interesting that people were creating these committees and were, wanting to become these vigilantes, because as it stood at that time, Jack the Ripper was just attacking prostitutes. Mm-hmm. And normally, at least today, you rarely hear about it. I mean, we find these serial killers later on, and we see that they've been killing prostitutes. But the reason why serial killers choose prostitutes is, again, because they're an underrepresented, and detached part of society. So I'm very interested in that. And it speaks to the violence of the crimes and the fact that, he was displaying them in such an outrageous manner that people forced to wake up and be like, listen, prostitutes suck unless, I'm looking for a little something on Friday night. They're being murdered by a monster. We need to do something about it. Don't you think that's interesting? Because otherwise, it's prostitutes being killed. Prostitutes were probably killed all the time. Yes, the way that they were killed.
Yeah, and also, as you mentioned, the display. Like, these women were put in front of businesses, put in the middle of busy streets. I mean, I could just...
They weren't like that Long Island, and I just know about it, especially because I'm close to it, the Long Island serial killer, which they believe, by the way, they might have caught, who for decades was killing prostitutes and dumping them off the LIE, the Long Island Expressway. But for the most part, serial killers aim to hide the bodies.
Yeah, that's like if a serial killer was going to kill a prostitute and put her down Van Nuys in the Bay Area. It's like, whoa, can't ignore a dead, mutilated body there. Do something.
Right.
Okay, so
it would be like in New York, it would be like putting a prostitute killed in that manner in Times Square.
Oh, Jesus, yeah. Doesn't matter if she's a druggy prostitute, we're gonna have to do something. Mm-hmm. And not only is this vigilante committee happening, which of course the local police do not like, because vigilante committees end up a lynch mob really quick, right?
Yeah.
The coroner releases something to the press. God damn it.
What a dick. Sorry.
So the coroner named Wynn Baxter, and he is doing an inquest to the...
By the way, what a name. Of course he would do that, just by his name alone.
What? I don't know. That's like an old-timey name, yeah?
Wynne Baxter.
Wynne Baxter. I think that's like
Wynne Baxter. Bastard. Sorry, guys.
Nice alliteration there. You must be an English major.
I try.
So when Annie Chapman, who was murdered on September 8th, 1888, remember all the murders are done in 1888. So this is the second known confirmed Jack the Ripper kill. He says, and he says that there was a knowledge done. The murderer shows that he has medical knowledge because her womb was removed. And like I said, this was scandalous newspaper time. Prostitute killed, displayed in a public way. You were already going to get attention, but now body parts removed. And this led the newspaper to speculate. What is this? Was it cannibalism?
Yeah, what is he doing with the womb? Do you know what I'm saying?
Was he having sex with said removed body part as some even more scandalous?
I'd like to know what he was doing with somebody else's womb.
And
my womb alone, you know what I'm saying?
and people were like, do we have a deranged madman? What's going on? And then, so Whitechapel, even though it was like the shitty, poor side of London, is still near the nice part of London. And there was this fear, right? What if the shitty part of London starts leaking into the good part of London?
That's always the fear. Who wants like dirty people and dirty immigrants and dirty prostitutes coming in your beautiful dining room with your crystal glasses? I don't blame them.
Well, I think it was more the fear of once he gets tired of, like, killing a dirty whore, what if he wants, like, a nice, clean victim who has a nice, clean, mint condition womb?
I don't know. Those, prostitutes, easy wombs.
So now...
Sorry, I'm making a joke of it. It's really not funny, but I think that we have to make a joke of it because otherwise it's really just too horrifying for words.
Well, I don't think anyone's going to complain that the jokes are too soon.
That's good. It's really good.
Maybe.
Did you practice that too?
But we now have an increased police presence, like...
Finally. Jesus.
Bring this killer to justice.
Jack the Ripper was just a concerned citizen who felt like there weren't enough police. So he said, I'm going to kill some prostitutes in a really bad way and some cops will come.
Maybe.
You know what? I just solved it. We're done.
He was a concerned citizen who was like, you know what? If you see something, tell someone.
He was like, you know what? We don't have enough cops here. God damn it. We've got these immigrants coming in. There's Jewish people living here. We've got prostitutes outside. I'm sick of this. I'm going to kill some prostitutes.
Maybe. Well, actually, in some of the adaptations of Jack the Ripper, he actually became... Never mind. I'll tell you about that later.
Oh, Jesus Christ. All right.
Okay, so, clues, mm-hmm. Right? So we have more police presence, and they're gonna...
Can I do this one just because I think it's insane?
Yes, please.
Because I just want to talk about, and especially last podcast on the left goes into graphic detail about this.
Yes.
So, as the police pursued Jack the Ripper, they finally discovered a clue.
Woo!
In a doorway. In nearby Goulston Street, a police constable, Alfred Long, patrolling his beat, came across a piece of Catherine Eddowes' blood-stained apron in the doorway of the book. Yes. I want to emphasize, I wrote this in my comments. I don't know if you guys got to see that.
I did. The spelling.
In addition to being stained with blood, it was also stained with feces.
Yes.
Okay. According to the last podcast on the left research, prostitutes did occasionally poop wherever they could. There weren't many public bathrooms back then, if any at all.
Well, also, they worked long hours.
Right. And let's be frank, there aren't that many now. So, listen, they just sat down and pooped where they could. The crazy fact about that is they saved the apron.
Mm-hmm.
They had it for a while, and they believe, eventually, who knows if it could have done DNA on it. I don't really know. But could you imagine what was on that apron? There probably had to have been some sort of evidence on it. And it's just shocking, too, when you realize how rudimentary and basic investigation was then, that they couldn't really do much with it. But I just think that that's crazy. And then, scrawled in chalk on the wall above the apron,
Mm-hmm.
was a message which read, "The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing." The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing. And there's some debate over how Jews was spelled. They believe that it was Juwes.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason why there is this debate is because it became a big issue when the Metropolitan Police showed up. They wanted to erase it in case it led to racial unrest in the district. People would have gone bananas over it.
And they would have. There was a huge anti-Semitic issue going on.
Right.
Because a lot of the Eastern European immigrants were Jewish. And they had a lot of clashes, not only with the Catholic Irish dock workers, but also because, well, England doesn't really have a reputation to be really welcoming to Jewish people, even today.
And unfortunately, the Jewish people weren't really welcome very many places then either. So, it's unfortunate that there was that feeling then, and who knows what would have happened. So the Metropolitan Police, knowing that this conflict, was like, we need to erase this. But the City of London Police wanted to photograph it, and they did have photography then. They wanted to photograph it because they felt like, and rightly so, that it would be an important lead in their hunt for the killer of Catherine Eddowes. The descent between the two forces was ended at 5:30 a.m. when Sir Charles Warren, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, arrived at the scene and ordered its immediate erasure. So they erased it, which I think is really crazy. I mean, handwriting alone, the spelling now has become a debate. Some people believe it was spelled one way, some people believed it was spelled another, and, that is a source of debate for one of the theories, that it had to deal with the Freemasons, which we'll get into later. But I just think that's crazy that something that was so crucial, that could have been one of the few. I mean, Jack the Ripper didn't give them that many clues. He didn't leave that much evidence. So you have this bloody, shit-stained apron and this crazy saying above it, this message above it that he obviously left for a reason, and they erased it.
I mean, he's already taunting them with public displays of his murder victims. It's not too far of a leap to think that he wouldn't be sending them love letters, which, the fact that he left a writing on the wall and it was erased, maybe we should segue into the letters coming in?
Yes. And also, just really quickly, I bet you that pissed him off. I'm sure he wanted that in the newspapers.
Definitely. Talk about my shit-stained apron and my taunting note, damn it.
He's probably like, fuck it, now I'm writing letters.
You gotta get the post office involved in this, damn it.
Chalk messages don't work, now I'm writing letters.
Goddamn, who knew that the only way to get rid of my chalk message was an eraser. An eraser, chalk's greatest enemy. I'm an asshole. Okay, so why was he given...
I'm the asshole.
Okay, I'm just a pathetic asshole. Alright, creating the name Jack the Ripper. Okay, my dad has always told me that when nicknames come in, I am not allowed to give myself my own nickname. That nicknames have to be earned, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, cool people get really cool nicknames, like Muhammad Ali, the Champ, right?
Right.
Or Anderson Cooper, Silver Fox, Anderson Cooper.
I don't like Anderson Cooper.
I know, but he's got a nickname. You know, they call him the Silver Fox, or, you know, that bitch Ann Coulter's nickname, that bitch Ann Coulter. See, all earned nicknames.
Queen, Beyonce's Queen Bey.
Exactly. But Jack the Ripper actually gave himself his own nickname because the London news agency, right, received a letter just a few days after the horrific Catherine Eddowes murder.
Mm-hmm.
The police receive, the London news agency receives a letter written in red ink, and this letter was blood or ink, we don't know. There is such a thing as red ink. And then the police, saying that the police won't fix me yet. He gloated about what he'd done, and he signed it, Jack the Ripper. And of course, the London news agency did hand over the letter to the police, but not before they made this letter public. Ha!
Would have been a good rap name. Yo, here's Jack the Ripper.
Represent East End, yo! Wait.
I came from Whitechapel.
Started from the bottom, now we're here.
Oh my god. I'm so lame. But so we talk about what a gigantic mistake this was?
Oh, so much.
They were pretty sure afterward that the letter was not in fact written by the killer, but probably was the work of a London journalist. And by publishing this, it led to many, I can't even imagine how many hoax letters coming in. And then because the name was just that cool.
And that catchy.
People of Whitechapel, they began sending in letters with the same or similar signatures, like, Jack the Carver, Jack the Candlestick Maker, etc. And the police and the investigation just went.
Leads us to one of the most famous hoax letters, and I feel that I would be doing a great disservice if I don't let Rita talk about the From Hell letter just because of her obsession with Johnny Depp.
Oh my god, I'm literally so excited about this.
Don't say I never gave you anything.
It's not just Johnny Depp, it's the actual letter itself that I just find so amazing and interesting. I can't. So one of the most famous of these prank letters that we're getting was sent to Mr. George Lusk, the president of the Mile End Vigilance Committee, in mid-October 1888. So now we're in the height of it. And basically, the letter was addressed from hell, and it contained half a motherfucking kidney, which, according to the letter's writer, he took from one victim.
Gross.
Which is, such a freaking gift, isn't it? It's like a cat when they bring gifts today. So I have a letter here. I would like to read it.
Yeah, no problem.
Because I think it's just so crazy.
I think it's so famous. We have to.
And keep in mind that there are many grammatical and spelling errors in this, but they seem very deliberate, and it seems that the letter was written by an intelligent and well-written person in spite of these errors because of their deliberateness. They were just some words that were much more difficult were spelled correctly, but words that were actually basic were misspelled. So it reads, "Dear boss, I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. I have laughed when they look so clever and talk about being on the right track. The joke about Leather Apron gave me real fits. I am down on whores and shan't quit ripping them till I do get buckled. Grand work the last job was. I gave the lady no time to squeal. How can they catch me now? I love my work and want to start again. You will soon hear of me with my funny little games. I saved some of the proper red stuff in a ginger beer bottle over the last job to write with, but it went thick like glue and I can't use it. Red ink is fit enough, I hope. Ha, ha. The next job I do, I shall clip the lady's ears off and send it to the police officers just for jolly, wouldn't you?
He's such an asshole.
Keep this letter back till I do a bit more work, then give it out straight. My knife's so nice and sharp, I want to get work right away if I get advance. Good luck. Yours truly, Jack the Ripper. Don't mind me giving the trade name. P.S. Wasn't good enough to post this before I got all the red ink off my hands. Curse it. No luck yet. They say I'm a doctor now. Ha ha.
Ha
That
ha.
is so fucking creepy. I can't. Actually, I'm sorry. That was a letter from before, and I just wanted to read the From Hell letter. So that was the letter that got him, that they believe was fake, the journalist.
Yes, and
From the letter, which is a lot shorter. So it says, From Hell, Mr. Lusk. Sir, I send you half the kidney I took from one woman, preserved it for you. Took another piece I fried and I ate. It was very nice. I may send you the bloody knife that took it out if only you wait a little while longer. Signed, Catch Me When You Can, Mr. Lusk. So creepy. So basically, despite lurid press speculation that he took the kidney or that the kidney was sent to Mr. Lusk, that it was in fact from a victim, or specifically from the body of Catherine Eddowes, the consensus amongst police and doctors was that it was, in fact, a sick prank perpetuated by a medical student. However, the whole world was without another murder, and again, once more, the people of the area entered November, finally believing that the killing spree was over. And unfortunately, it was not. And I have to say, and I made note of this, is it wrong of me that even though it's believed to be a prank, I kind of always hoped it was real?
see, I always thought this was real. I did not know this was a hoax letter, although now, especially after you pointed out that the writer was able to spell all the hard words correctly, but misspelled the simple words, kind of leaves credence that it was a hoax, you know?
Right. Yeah. Like, he spelled things, but then he knew that knife began with a K.
Exactly.
Which is just as a teacher, and I know that you know this too, is like as a basic thing, if they know to put a K in front of knife, that they misspell other things, is just weird.
Yeah. So, I mean, but it kind of, and I hate saying this, bummed me out to find out that this was a hoax letter.
And I just want to say too that some of my research said that they believed that it was some animal. I forget. Then, if you look at other research, some people are so bold enough to say it was in fact confirmed to be that of a human female. But so even that can't be even that people can't get correct.
What are we going to do? What are we going to do, Rita? We need to solve this murder.
Mary Kelly.
Okay, so the final of the canonical 5, although I guess we're taking Martha Tabram, so canonical 6?
Or, who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows, Rainey?
Yes.
Jack the Ripper, and nothing better to do.
So, we do know that Mary Kelly was murdered on November 9th, 1888, and this is considered the most vicious attack. But before we go into how vicious the murder was, and God help me, it was disgustingly vicious.
Yeah.
I just want to point out something that is like days, weeks after we researched this, I still can't get over this section of the notes. Can I read it?
Yeah.
So around 4 a.m., 2 neighbors said that they heard cries near Mary Kelly's home of murder, but no one really did anything initially because cries of murder were so common in that neighborhood in Whitechapel that people didn't pay attention.
But let me ask you something. If you were being murdered, would you scream murder?
What are you supposed to scream?
I'm not judging. I'm just saying. Like, wouldn't you scream and say, like, help? I just think it's so interesting that she was able to articulate murder. You know what I mean? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Kind of
like, he's fucking trying to kill me.
Like, get the fuck in here and help me.
But, okay, the fact that people, like, oh yeah, like, everyone just screams murder. You know,
They're like, whatever.
There's drunken brawls where people are trying to, like, knife each other. There's domestic violence where a guy is, like, beating the shit out of his wife and literally trying to kill her. So, like,
the
murder.
guy having a good time with a prostitute in an alley nearby, and they're being too loud.
So, oh, God, I don't know. I don't know if there's just something with me that I read that and I'm like, oh, God, this is so fucked up.
It's, honestly, I'm going to tell you something. This murder in particular is one of the most horrifying and frightening for me. I think about it a lot, which sounds weird, but when I think about serial killers, this is one of the more prevalent, examples for me of just something of a really horrifying crime. And I don't mean to make fun of it or make light of it. I'm just saying.
No, we have to. This is like gallows humor. Because how else can you read that a body was lying naked in the middle of the bed, the shoulders flat, but the axis of the body inclined to the left side, and that her liver and her breast and arms were cut off and her face hacked beyond recognition? That's why. If you're wondering why we're, like, cracking jokes, it's because of this. This is why.
Yeah. And, you know, I just still stand by what I said, that I just think it's weird that she screamed murder. You know what I mean? Isn't that weird?
A part of me wonders, was she the one screaming murder? Or maybe he was screaming murder? Because I think once you've, like, removed my boobs, I'm not really screaming much of anything. I'm just making animal noises out of pain.
Yeah. And he freaking took her eyebrows and ears, partly removed.
He put parts of her body on the table next to her bed.
Her body in the kettle over the fireplace.
It was...
I don't know. I don't know what to say. The legs were wide apart, the left thigh at right angles to the trunk, and the right forming an obtuse angle with the pubes. The whole of the surface of the abdomen and thighs were removed, and the abdominal cavity emptied of its viscera. The breasts were cut off, the arms mutilated by several jagged...
It's so...
The viscera were found in various parts, the uterus and kidneys with one breast under the head, the other breast by the right foot, the liver between the feet, the intestines by the right side, and the spleen by the left side of the body. The flaps removed from the abdomen and thighs were on a fucking table.
The table, right?
The right corner was saturated with blood, and on the floor beneath was a pool of blood covering about 2 feet.
It was absolutely brutal. It was absolutely disgusting and brutal.
That is so fucking personal. You're obliterating a person. You're erasing their identity. It's not even the right word. Their person. And
I think what makes this particularly horrific is after the double murder of Catherine Eddowes, right? Catherine Eddowes and Elizabeth Stride in the end of September, there was this calm where people started to speculate, especially in the press, that the killing spree was over.
Right. So everybody was lulled into this false sense of security, and here was Mary Kelly. And, you know, just an interesting thing about that double murder is they believe that he was interrupted with Stride, because he didn't get to fully
play with her.
Right. Do his magic with her. And so when he got to
Catherine Eddowes,
they believe that's why it was a lot more graphic, and, you know, it's intensifying then. And then, you know, I think that might help to explain why Mary Kelly was just so horrific and violent, was that, you know, he waited a while.
And also, what sets her apart is, yes, the door was open to her home, but he had her in a closed area.
Right. This is the only murder that happened indoors.
So, I don't know, he had time to play with her, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, no, that is a very strong hypothesis, or a strong inference about that, is that because she was the first murder that occurred indoors, and there were no people really around. Meaning that, and there was no one to walk in on them. He was allowed that time and that intimacy with the body, unfortunately. It's really honest. It's just disgusting.
And we have reached the end of our canonical 5, canonical 6. And for a lot of people who study Jack the Ripper, the horrific death of Mary Kelly is the final chapter, a bloody, disgusting, and brutal chapter. I'm not ashamed to admit that I felt really gross after reading her murder.
Yeah.
It's
really it's, you know what it is too? I mean, what we were reading from was written as a result of the investigation or the inspection of her body, the examination of her body. So that is literally what they were writing about it as they were observing it. And to think, even though it's a written word, when you try to imagine that, it's just something else.
Imagine being there and having to see that.
No, I mean, that and I don't even know. I don't know what we would do today with that kind of crime. That's what I mean. The closest we've got, Dahmer, we've got Bundy.
BTK.
Right. And I'm thinking about people who, were really
monstrous.
Yeah. I mean, those are the ones that I think of who did real shit. Ted Bundy in particular did really freaky shit. And Dahmer did really freaky shit with bodies. And especially, there's something also really disturbing about the concept of the shit people do, that he would be doing to the body after they were dead. He didn't really care. It didn't seem like he was that interested in the actual murder. He was more interested in what he can do to the body and the body parts after.
Yeah, the horrific things he did after he murdered these. And you know what? We don't even know if these women had died by the time he was cutting into them. Right. Remember, this is a time where we don't know a real time of death. Forensics was not even invented yet. I mean, I think they were really relying on eyewitnesses.
There were none. There's one that stands out of someone who believed that they saw a well-dressed man.
Yes.
With one of the women one night. And that is the closest and the most reliable eyewitness report so far. But there's really not much else.
But I want to point out that during Victorian England, prostitution was rampant. This is where they're
because of a repressed society.
Yes, the cult of virginity, this Victorian morals was running rampant. And also, and I know Rita and I have talked about this, but I cannot stress enough how close the good side of London was to the bad side of London.
Right.
And, there you are, this really uptight Victorian guy who's courting a woman. And
he's a bore, probably.
I mean, this is a time in the world.
A well-bred bore.
There's a time in England, right, where they started putting sofa covers and coffee, and, tablecloths and doilies over everything, because the idea was if a man saw something even remotely resembling a female's leg, he would start humping it. So we put table covers and sofa covers over our furniture so that guys will not hump our furniture. And so I'm not justifying prostitution, but come on now.
Well, anytime in history that you have a repressed group of people, you will find more sexual activity and sexual deviance because of that repression.
Oh, so you said it so much more intelligently than me. I was going to
No,
say shit was going to go down anytime you repress people.
No, it's a no, honestly, it's true, but it's true. It's a fact of the matter that anytime there is a repressed group of people, there is a high incidence of sexual perversion or sexual deviance or sexual addiction, to be honest with you.
That is why anytime you have the RNC going anywhere, grinder people go up.
Mm-hmm.
Just gonna...
For sure.
Although
For sure,
before...
particular religious groups, I'm not even going to get into specific religious groups, but if you look at religious groups who preach abstinence or who are very specific about sexual partners and sexuality, you will find a lot of interesting sexual habits in that.
Oh, yeah. I had a lot of girls who wore promise rings in high school who ended up having anal sex. Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's actually, I mean, as sad and disturbing as it is, it's also kind of fascinating to me that there is that outlet for them, that, you know, it's really sick. You know, we have this repressed Victorian society led by Queen Victoria herself.
Who loved sex, by the way.
Right. I mean, what a weird queen, I have to say.
I think that's going to be up for another podcast down the line.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, and so it makes sense that there would be these men who used those prostitutes as escapism. And keep in mind that this is a time that people didn't have a lot of information or knowledge about sexually transmitted diseases. They didn't fear that because they didn't understand it. So for them, you know, they thought the quiet, reserved wife who's the appropriate figure in that period of time, and they're probably bored by it, and so that's their escapism, unfortunately. So they go to this area of prostitutes.
Although, I think we have to put this out here, right? We're not saying that every person who goes and gets a prostitute is going to end up being a serial killer.
No, nor are we excusing it by saying, well, you know, things sucked then, so. And I don't mean to say that all wives then were boring. I'm just saying that wives were expected to be reserved and pure.
Yeah, there is a reason why one of the famous sayings from the Victorian era is close your eyes and think of England.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but the aftermath.
But sex wasn't meant to be pleasurable for women.
Procreation.
Sex was something that you endured with a man. And I think that speaks to the fact that prostitutes were so popular and so successful, for lack of a better term.
So I think what we should do next is talk about the aftermath.
Should we summarize these potential murders?
Well, let's introduce it a little bit first. So, after Mary Kelly, like we said, a lot of ripperologists think that this is the end. But there are theories that maybe this continued a couple of years later. So,
right.
All right, go for it.
All right. So first we start with Rose Millett murder. I think I'm pronouncing that right. On December 20th, 1888, she was found dead, but she was not mutilated.
No.
Although the newspapers were full of speculation, of course, that she had been murdered by Jack the Ripper, the police doctors concluded that her death had been accidental.
But
however, the coroner and the jury at her subsequent inquest disagreed, and a verdict of murder by person or persons unknown was returned.
I think Rose Millett's murder is kind of like Emma Smith's murder. You know, we have to put a question mark around that, and we're not really sure.
Right, and you know what? Honestly, after Mary Kelly, where he was able to really play and have fun, I find it hard to believe that he would return to not mutilating the body. So that we come to Alice Mackenzie. On July 17th, 1889, the body of Alice Mackenzie was found in Castle Alley off Whitechapel High Street. There were 2 stab wounds to her throat, and a long, but not unduly deep, wound ran from her left breast to her navel. In addition, there were also shallow wounds and scratches to her lower abdomen. Although at the time some police officers and doctors believed that Jack the Ripper had returned, the general consensus was, and still is among experts, that she was not a victim of Jack the Ripper.
But, those wounds and those throats, and I really hate to say this, but by 1889, these murders had been going on for over a year, and the press was more or less tired. There was such a thing as Ripper fatigue, if you can believe it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, there was also something to the fact that people probably wanted and wished it was over because it was so disturbing. And so it was sort of wishful thinking.
Definitely.
I'm interested in this being Ripper only because of where he attacked.
And also the knife.
Right. So we've got the breast, we've got the throat, we've got the abdomen, and to be honest with you, I was making another point and now I forgot. But, I think that there's something to it.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I think what I wanted to say is how many murderers that were probably running rampant in Whitechapel murdered the same way or were interested in the same methods. Really there was another murderer in Whitechapel at that time that attacked throats and breasts and stomachs.
At the same time, if you did want to kill your wife, how easy would it be to, attack throats and breasts and say, oh no, she totes got murdered by Jack.
Well, we've got the Pinchin Street murder.
Yes. And this one is especially sad to me.
Yeah, and now this is about a year after one of his murders. The mutilated torso of an unidentified woman was found under a railway arch in Pinchin Street, a little way from Commercial Road and a short distance from Verner Street, where Elizabeth Stride had been murdered almost 1 year before. So now we've got the fact that it's a year after, and we've got the fact that the location is close to where one of the victims were found.
An anniversary murder, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. Press reports at the time mentioned similarities to the mutilations to the torso and the injuries sustained by Jack the Ripper's victims, but then Metropolitan Police Commissioner James Monroe considered the modus operandi to be different to that of Jack the Ripper and ruled the woman out as one of his victims.
A lot of his thing is this was under the railway, so her body wasn't on display. Where's the rest of her body? And this is just something that frustrates me because it looks like Commissioner Monroe doesn't want it to be Jack the Ripper. The body was put under a railway, so it's not in the public. Well, hello, look at Mary Kelly.
Yeah.
Where's the rest of the body? Right. Hello, Mary Kelly's stomach was on the table, so you don't think?
Right. No, you're totally right about that. No, you're totally right, and I think that. I don't know. I think that it's kind of going along with what I said before, that there's that wishful thinking, that people probably wanted it to be over. And I think that they felt like if they ignored it or they didn't acknowledge it, then it wasn't real. And then we come to the potential last Whitechapel murder of Frances Coles.
Yes.
So she's the final name to appear on the Whitechapel murders file. Her body was found at 2:20 a.m. on February 13th, 1892. Now we're in 1892, in Swallow Gardens of Nansell Street, not far from the Tower of London. Her throat had been cut, but she had not sustained any further mutilations. The fact that she was still alive when found by Police Constable Ernest Thompson led to speculation that the killer, as in the case of Elizabeth Stride, had been interrupted. When it transpired that she had spent the days prior to her death with a sailor by the name of Thomas Sadler, and that he had not only been involved in several drunken altercations around the time of her murder, but that he had also sold a clasp knife shortly after her murder. The police arrested him and considered him a likely suspect, not only for the murder of Frances Coles, but also for the other murders. However, the case against him soon collapsed, and Sadler was cleared of any involvement, and he was released. With the murder of Frances Coles by person or persons unknown, yet again, the Whitechapel murders came to an end, and the file itself was closed.
And that's it. Freaking closed. After thinking you got one guy, some sailor dude, is responsible for all of the murders, you can't pin it on him, but you know what? Sorry, ladies. Case is closed.
I feel like cases have been open for years before they're closed. I hear cases being closed now after decades. So I just go back to that feeling that people were like, listen, we can't accept or tolerate or, believe that there is this monster among us. We have to feel like it's over.
You're so right about that. You are so
That's just my thought. And I think that makes sense for the human psyche, that you want to believe that you're safe. And to think that there's this monster, this disgusting, horrible person is walking the streets along with you. I don't think that people, after a certain point, and especially when it becomes evident that they're probably not going to be caught, you want to believe that that's done.
But, okay, this is the thing that drives me crazy. This is the thing that really drives me crazy is they weren't safe. They weren't done. They just wanted it to be over because they, I don't know, wanted to put more coverings over their leg furniture.
Yeah, I mean, you know what, and there's something to that also. If we're talking about a culture of repression, of sexual repression, we're talking about a culture of emotional repression.
It's like, I don't know, have you ever, you've watched My Fair Lady, right?
Of course.
When they're at the racetrack and they're like, oh my god, this is the most exciting thing I've ever seen, but like nobody's face changes at all.
Yeah, right.
It's like that.
Mm-hmm.
You just imagine them being like that all the time.
Yeah.
But you know what? You know what, Rita? Even though the police back then have given up on it, we haven't. Like, look at us doing the heavy lifting, because let's get into theories.
Okay. Can we talk about the FBI?
Yes,
profile?
Please. And thank you so much for sending this to me. It's it's short, but is the most fascinating read ever, and I will definitely put a link to that.
I want to read parts of it.
Yes.
I want to read parts of it, and what I find really interesting is this was done in 1988. So this was done, almost 100 years later. 100 years later, yeah, exactly, actually.
Yes, I mean, the murder's happening in 1888, this having been done in 1988. Amazing, amazeballs. Maybe
sometimes I can do math.
We should have, waited an extra year and have done this in 2018.
For a second, I was like, I'm so bad about years. I'm like, wait, am I in 2018?
I love you.
I love you too. Thank God you love me, because I am dumb. But I'm looking at this, I've got it right here.
Uh-huh.
So first it talks about victimology. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to scan for the most important details. So basically, they say here, this person who is responsible for coming up with these reports, which if you love true crime like us and you're interested in this, if you look up FBI records, the vault, it'll have all of these things here for you about these serial killers, and I just think it's really interesting. So they say here, and this was compiled by John E. Douglas of the FBI. It says here, in each homicide, the victim was a prostitute with a reputation of drinking quite heavily. These two ingredients place the victim in a high-risk category. By high risk, we define this as someone who is very likely to be the victim of violent crime. From an investigative perspective, this makes it extremely difficult in reference to developing logical suspects. From a forensic viewpoint, if any evidence is obtained, such as hairs and fibers, semen, etc., law enforcement would not know for certain if this evidence did in fact come from the subject. 100 years ago, prostitution was not as organized as it is today, where we have pimps controlling, monitoring, and protecting their stables. During the Jack the Ripper era, women worked independently. A female prostitute who drank heavily was looking for trouble. We would suspect that there were numerous instances of these women being physically assaulted, raped, and ripped off. Which is stuff that we were talking about before anyway. So the Jack the Ripper victims were targeted because they were readily accessible. Jack the Ripper did not have to initiate contact. And that's important because prostitutes obviously would be going up to a man. He didn't have to worry about initiating contact. This was done for him by the prostitute. This is an important feature in a case such as this and will be addressed later. So the primary areas noted in the medical examination was that there was no evidence of sexual assault. He didn't physically rape them. It can be inferred that this was a sexually driven crime. He probably, who knows what happened, orgasm during it or afterward. It was a source of fantasy for him. I don't know.
But we do know there was no sexual assault or torture done. Right. So all of that was like an emotional, psychological gratification. I don't want to say he didn't violate their bodies, because if you take up my stomach and put it on the table next to my bed, you fucking violated me. But there was no sexual.
There was no penetration at the very least.
Yes.
That's what we know. He killed them swiftly, so we know there that, there's product killers, and then there's, the killers who enjoy the experience. We know there that he didn't really care about how he killed them necessarily. He cared about it after. The subject was able to maintain control of victims during the initial blood style of attack. So he was surprised. Subject removed body organs such as the kidney, vagina, nose on some of the victims, indicating some anatomical knowledge. No kidding. There was no evidence of physical torture prior to death. There was post-mortem mutilation, possible manual strangulation. Blood from victims was concentrated in small areas. Rings were taken from one of the victims, which is actually pretty interesting. The last victim was killed indoors and was the most mutilated. Subject spent a considerable amount of time at that scene. We talked about that before. And the time of death was in the early morning hours. Yeah. So this is also interesting. All the homicides occurred within 1/4 of a mile from each other and occurred either on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday during early morning hours. After the first homicide at Whitechapel Station, the subject moved swiftly across town. If a line is drawn from crime scenes 2, 3, 4, and 5, a triangular configuration is formed. This is observed in other types of serial crimes. This triangular configuration is viewed as a secondary comfort zone for the Ripper.
Not a calling card to the Freemasons.
Right, exactly, because so many people think that that's the Freemason sign, when really it was just probably the comfort zone for the Ripper. This movement is caused when a subject believes that the investigation is heating up in his primary comfort zone. The primary comfort zone would be the location of the first homicide in the vicinity of Whitechapel Station. It is the opinion of this crime analyst that there were other attacks in the Whitechapel area that either went unreported or for some reason were not considered by authorities to be crimes of Jack the Ripper.
And we've seen how, I don't want to call them inept because it sounds mean, I mean, I really believe they did the best they could. And yeah, could they have done better? Fuck yeah, they could have done better. But at the same time, I really can't even be too mad at them.
Yeah, it was difficult. Could you imagine being under that kind of pressure and you have this monster among you? We don't have serial killers like that today.
Unless you're and especially if you're like an opium-riddled clairvoyant,
So, some criminologists and behavioral scientists have written in the past that subjects will maintain their modus operandi, and that is what links so-called signature crimes. This conclusion is incorrect. The subject will change his MO as he gains additional experience, his learned behavior. However, the personal desires and needs of the subject are expressed in the ritual aspect of a crime. The ritual is something that he must always do because it is the acting out of the fantasy.
So, in a theory, every woman that we talked about, from Emma Smith all the way down to Frances Coles, could be done by one Mr. Jack the Ripper, just because one survived, or he didn't take a body part or another one, or I don't know, maybe you just find a torso. Sorry.
I want to talk about some of his traits and characteristics. I think it's so interesting that the FBI is able to do this. And proven to be very close with these findings in other cases, which I think is really interesting. So they say here that these homicides are referred to as Lusk murders. Mm-hmm. Roy Hazelwood and I wrote an article several years ago which appeared in the FBI's Law Enforcement Bulletin. The word lust does not mean love or have any sexual meaning other than the fact that the subject attacks the genital areas of his victims. The vaginal area and breast are the focal point of attack in a woman, and the penis and scrotum are the attack area of male offender. More often we see women. He says here, the age of onset for these types of homicides is generally between the mid to late 20s. Based upon the high degree of psychopathology exhibited at the scene, the ability of the subject to converse with the victim until a suitable location is found, and the ability to avoid detection places him between the age bracket of 28 to 36 years of age. However, it should be noted that age is a difficult characteristic to categorize, blah, blah, blah. This offender does not look out of the ordinary. However, the clothing he wears at the time of the assault is not his everyday dress. He wants to project to unsuspecting females, specifically prostitutes, that he has money. Consequently, this relieves him from initiating contact. He comes from a family where he was raised by a domineering mother and weak, passive, and or absent father. In all likelihood, his mother drank heavily and enjoyed the company of many men. So either she was a prostitute or she was close to it. As a result, he failed to receive consistent care and constant contact with stable adult role models. Consequently, he became detached socially and developed a diminished emotional response toward his fellow man. He became asocial, preferring to be alone. His anger became internalized. He probably started fires, started torturing small animals. He discovered increased areas of dominance, power, and control. And as he grew older, his fantasy developed a strong component that included domination, cruelty, and mutilation of women. We would expect to find evidence of this violent, destructive fantasy life through personal writings of his, as well as drawings of women being mutilated. For employment, he would seek a position where he could work alone and vicariously experience his destructive fantasies. Such employment would include work as a butcher, mortician's helper, medical examiner's assistant, or hospital attendant. He is employed Monday through Friday, and on Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday is off from work. He has carried a knife for defense purposes, just in case he was ever attacked, he would be ready. This paranoid type of thinking is in part justified because of the poor self-image he has of himself. He would be expected to have some type of physical abnormality. However, although not severe, he perceives this as being psychologically crippling. We would look for someone below or above average in height and or weight, may have problems with speech, scarred complexion, physical illness, or injury. We would not expect this type of offender to be married. He is not adept in meeting people socially, and the major extent of his heterosexual relationships would be with prostitutes. Due to lack of hygiene practices by prostitutes at that time and the absence of treatment for venereal disease, he may have been affected or infected.
Well, actually,
if infected, this would further fuel his hatred and disgust for women.
Well, I also want to add that a few of the victims had their noses cut off, which
Correct.
was what people thought of at the time happened to syphilis victims, because if you have syphilis, your nose would fall off. So the removal of the nose was seen as that's what you get for giving me syphilis. FYI, you don't lose your nose if you have syphilis anymore, because, you know, we have antibiotics. Yay, penicillin.
They also add that he would be perceived as being quiet, a loner, slightly withdrawn, obedient, and neat and orderly in appearance and when working. He drinks in the local pubs, which is interesting because we know all our prostitutes have drinking problems. And after a few spirits, he becomes more relaxed and finds it easier to engage in conversation. He lives or works in the Whitechapel area. The first homicide could be in close proximity to either his home or workplace. It is noted that London Hospital is only 1 block from the first homicide, and as stated earlier in this analysis, we would expect other violent crimes in this vicinity. And then also, it says later, which I think is actually really interesting, that he was probably investigated or probably interviewed or spoken to at the very least and was overlooked. Investigators and citizens in the community had a preconceived idea or picture of what Jack the Ripper would look like. Because of the belief that he would appear odd or foolish in appearance, he was overlooked and or eliminated as a potential suspect.
It's always those nice, quiet ones.
It's just so disturbing. And then I think it's interesting they include later some tips about if they were, to investigate or to speak to Jack the Ripper himself. They said that he would be best suited to be interviewed during the early morning hours. He would feel more relaxed to express himself by writing about his motivation. Something else I want to talk about, and then we can move on from his FBI profile. I just think it's so interesting.
Oh, it's crazy fascinating. I can't, I was reading along as you were, as you were, reading it, and it's bonkers, you know?
I know, and I honestly truly think that it's probably very true. And so if you go to page 5, I'm just going to talk about the letters that they talk about receiving, which I just think is interesting, and then we can move on. I just wanted to read all of that because I do think that that's probably true. And if they had this sort of information before, they might have been able to catch him. But talking about the letters that he wrote, or potentially wrote, or people wrote with his moniker, it is quite rare when a serial murderer of this type communicates with police, media, family, etc. When they do communicate, they generally provide specifics relative to the crime that are only known by the subject. In addition, they generally provide information relative to their motivation for committing such a heinous crime. It is my opinion, the person who's written this article or this report, that this series of homicides was not perpetuated by someone who set up a challenge against law enforcement, meaning it wasn't like a cat and mouse thing. While the killer knew he would be receiving national as well as international publicity, this was not his primary motivation. He wasn't in it for the guts and glory. In summary, I would not put emphasis on the communiques during this investigation. However, I would develop an investigative technique with the goal in mind to identify the author of the communiques. So that's pretty interesting because we do, thinking about the way that the news was then and also thinking about the way that he was displaying the bodies. The publicity.
Oh, attention. Attention is an amazing factor for anything.
Yeah. So I think that's actually really interesting that, I think it's mostly interesting to think, about maybe the type of person he was. Not gonna lie, growing up, and even after reading Patricia Cornwall, I thought of this guy with the top hat.
And monocle. I always imagine him with a monocle.
And just dressed nicely and was smarter than everybody else and was sort of this genius, even though he was a horrible person. He was just this person who was very intelligent and this mastermind. And it's interesting to read that report and think that it probably wasn't.
Well, okay. From what you said to contemporary theories, I mean, of course, during the time the murders was going on, there was that image of the gentleman killer, right? Like this elegantly dressed man with a top hat and a walking stick and a monocle. I mean, if you go down all the people who was suspected of being Jack the Ripper, I mean, you've got Lewis Carroll, right? The Alice in Wonderland guy. You have,
That's ridiculous, by the way.
You have, Arthur Conan Doyle.
Guys, I have a cold.
Arthur Conan Doyle was suspected. Hans Christian Andersen, yes, the writer of The Little Mermaid, was suspected. So, I don't think our initial ideas were that far off. So, do we want to talk about the leather apron scare?
Sure.
Okay, so, around the time of Jack the Ripper, there was a man that local streetwalkers called the leather apron guy. The leather apron, because he wore a leather apron, right? And, the prostitutes in this area said that Leather Apron was running an extortion racket. That is, he was trying to give them a shakedown for money and threatened to rip them open if he didn't pay up. And the description that the prostitutes gave was that he looked Jewish in appearance. And, well, number one, the police were just really upset about this because they did not want a race war, right?
Mm-hmm.
And shortly after the murder of Annie Chapman, the police arrested a local man named John Pizer, who was also given the nickname Leather Apron. However, he had ironclad alibis about where he was at the time of the murder, and he was ruled out as a suspect. The other one is that Jack the Killer was an educated man, maybe a doctor, who was doing this because of
That's how I always thought.
Yes, the expertly removed womb. And also the idea that, well, when you rip someone open, all the squishy parts look the same, I guess. So we don't know. There are also more theories from the website Ripper Casebook, which I will also put in the description, that goes even more out there. Do you want to talk about the Satanic Ritual Freemasons theory?
Who, me?
Mm-hmm. About rings and farthings being placed.
This plays into later what we'll talk about. So some theorists, some ridiculous theorists, because I don't believe this, has suggested that the Ripper murders indicate a sort of ritualistic behavior, perhaps indicative of an interest in black magic. Although anything is possible, there does not seem to be any ritualized pattern in the murders. They were all most likely the result of chance and opportunity. Stories have circulated about items, rings, farthings, etc., being placed ritually at the feet of Annie Chapman, but this was an invention of the press. No rings and no farthings were found at the scene of the crime, only a piece of envelope, some muslin, and a broken comb.
I could imagine Jack being so much of an asshole that after he killed Annie Chapman, he threw, like, coins at her feet, like, you know.
He was paying for that. Thanks, babe.
Yeah, money's on the dresser, but I don't...
See you around. Maybe I won't. Never mind. So then, it comes to the question of, did Jack the Ripper have medical knowledge? Should we go into this? I think we should.
Yeah.
So,
I did do a really good job talking about it, but let's talk more.
So they think that it basically comes from the fact that in some cases, certain organs were removed from the bodies of the victims. Some doctors believed they detected medical precision in his cuts. Others claimed he had no training whatsoever, not even that of a butcher. And it comes back to what I was saying before about that kidney, where, there's some reports that it was from an animal, and there's some reports that it is from a female human. So there's just no one answer to it, unfortunately. So, of course, it says that there is no standard answer. It would seem likely that the killer had at least some rudimentary understanding of anatomy. To be honest with you, if I was looking at that stuff, I would have no idea. I've dissected a pig, unfortunately, and even after that, I would have no idea, what the uterus and a kidney would look like. And there's this emphasis in near pitch black conditions. Whether the understanding came from a medical background or perhaps experience as a butcher, it's really difficult to say. Because a butcher, believe it or not, would really understand the organs as well and probably be able to very skillfully remove them.
And the other theory why this person could have been like a butcher would have given people more credence than a medical student was that there were butcher shops in Whitechapel, and this was a time where people were not as sanitary as we live in right now, and it was really common for people to, walk around with like blood-stained clothes.
Wash their hands.
Yeah, okay, as much as we make to do with there's feces in the street. Yes, there were feces in the street. Yes, people screamed out murder all the time. Look, across the room, 2 people are in a knife fight. So, yeah, a butcher walking around, hands and clothes covered in blood. Why not? Why aren't you covered in blood, Rita? Maybe you're the one who's suspicious.
It's just another Wednesday.
Yeah, I'm sure you'd be more suspicious if you weren't covered in blood and feces.
Who the fuck is this?
Was that your Cockney accent?
They come to the nicer side of England.
That is your Cockney accent, isn't it?
It is. Are you trying to say it ain't nice?
You sound just like Audrey Hepburn in My Fair Lady.
I don't know if that's an insult or a compliment.
Take it as a compliment.
Okay. Should we talk about the royal conspiracy?
Yes, please. Oh my God, I'm so excited to talk about this.
Yay.
So, Stephen Knight wrote this book in the 1970s, right? Called Jack the Ripper, The Final Solution. And it is completely bonkers, and it's crazy, and it's completely wrong.
Wait, what year did he write that
in? 1976.
So, this is an unfortunate title, The Final Solution.
Why you gotta hate on it? Why you gotta hate on it, man?
Nazi Germany.
Oh, okay. Well, like, the final solution to the mystery.
You know what I mean? Like, why did you write, couldn't you come up with something better? You know what I'm saying? Jack the Ripper. How about just saying the answer?
Because Portrait of a Killer, Jack the Ripper, was going to be taken by Patricia Cornwell, and he wanted to be nice.
Whatever. Go ahead, sorry.
Guy, I just gotta rain on my parade all the time.
I'm not raining on your parade, I'm raining on Stephen Knight's title.
Okay, fine.
By the way, I'm hearing myself repeating, echoing. Do you hear that?
No, I mean, I heard myself talking in a bit of a robot voice a little bit earlier, but I think we're okay now.
Okay, alright.
Okay, so in the Jack the Ripper book by Stephen Knight, the idea is that the Freemasons and Queen Victoria were working together to... Shh! Stop! Stop!
What?
Oh God, you make me lose my... Okay, so the
I
Freemasons...
didn't do anything.
I see you judging. Okay, stop it. Okay, so... Stop!
You're coming to the final solution over there?
Stop.
I really didn't do anything. I coughed.
Okay. So, the Freemasons and Queen Victoria were in cahoots to stop a group of women from blackmailing Prince Edward, a grandson of Queen Victoria, and her heir to the throne. So, what happened was that Prince Edward had married a common Catholic girl and had a child by her, but this woman actually had dabbled in prostitution, right?
See, I heard she was a shopkeeper.
A shopkeeper / part-time prostitute.
See, I heard she wasn't a prostitute.
Well, all we know is she was a common girl and she was Catholic, right?
Well, but, who knows? Honestly, common girl back then probably equaled prostitute.
It was code. Like when my mom says, like, oh, she looks well fed, it's code for fat. Okay, so, what Queen Victoria wanted to do was, like, make this go away, right?
She wanted to repress it.
Yes, to save the monarchy. So, she put out her henchman, who was her personal physician, a man named Sir William Gull, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who was also a Freemason.
Snap.
To kill all of these women, and that's why all of their murders was done in a Freemasony kind of way. However, if you want to believe this royal conspiracy, you would have to overlook some very important things. Number one, Prince Edward was a homosexual. Now, I'm not saying that homosexuals can't get married to women. There are such things as lavender marriages, of course, right?
But I doubt that he would go to the lengths to piss his grandmother off and hook up with a Catholic girl.
Yeah. And at the time, Sir William Gull was 72 and suffered a stroke, which left him paralyzed. And Queen Victoria kept him on as her personal physician out of sentiment. He actually didn't really do a lot of things for her anymore. But, it's like a well-favored uncle, that you don't want to get rid of just because he can't do his job. So he, unless he had magical powers, there was no way he was capable of murdering anyone or moving swiftly. And there is no evidence that there was any Freemason-like connections. Yes, people who believe in the royal conspiracy point out that the murder was done in a triangle shape if you look at it on the map.
It's ridiculous. I'm going to state it right here before we move on that I think that the royal conspiracy theory is the most ridiculous one.
Unless, of course, it is adapted into a movie version from hell with Johnny Depp. Because that's
another story.
The only thing that is missing is that there was no opium-addicted clairvoyant.
I mean... Anyway, I just think it's just ridiculous. I want to know who came up with it to start with. It's just, I always wonder about these conspiracy theories, where it comes from, what the generation of it was. And I just think it's honestly just truly dumb.
Well, Freemasons were seen as, the Illuminatis of the 1800s. I mean...
Yeah, but this is the deal, though, right? So the Queen's pissed off, and she's like, fuck this. I want, this taken care of. I'm ordering that this guy take care of it for me. Do you really think he's going to go to those lengths? He'll cut her throat. He'll strangle her, whatever. He's not going to go through a whole ritualistic murder.
Or, you know what? You're the queen. Why don't you just tell the police to, like, capture these women and, like, kill them in their jail cell? Why do it the hard way? Like, if
And freak everyone out.
Yeah. Only calling more attention to yourself.
I don't even like to talk about this conspiracy theory because I think it's just so dumb. Like, I want to know who came up with it and I want to punch them in the face.
Okay, but, from movies to books to, everything, we cannot get over Jack the Ripper. Like, Alfred Hitchcock did a movie about Jack the Ripper. Johnny Depp did a movie with Jack the Ripper. Let's talk about From Hell for a little bit.
You mean the cleanest prostitute ever?
Oh my God, Heather Graham was like the cleanest prostitute I've ever seen, except, well, top three. Cameron Diaz, Gangs of New York, and Julia Roberts from Pretty Woman. None of these prostitutes have, like, herpes around their mouth, you know.
Specifically Julia, right?
Especially, look, I have gotten lost in downtown Hollywood. I have seen the women that crawl out at night who shout, "Hey baby." There's no, like, you know, there's no scabs on their faces. There's no, like, herpes marks. There's no, like, track marks on their arms.
Rainey.
Yeah.
Julia Roberts' character of Vivian was a whore with a heart of gold.
And is that, like, STD repellent?
I don't know. Antibiotics may cure it. So, From Hell with Johnny Depp. So, I remember, what's funny is I remember this movie probably from when it came out. And I actually thought it had a different ending than it did. I don't know where I got that.
Because you're sentimental?
I can, but I don't remember it ending the way that it did. And what's funny is, because of my addiction to this topic, I even paid to rent it. And it's frustrating. I'm not even going to get into my issue with Cinemax, but Cinemax can kiss my ass and suck my non-existent dick. Then I paid to rent it, and then of course it came on TV right after that, so I've been watching it. And it is just so awful. It's so awful. It's just terrible of representing that time.
Well, okay, a few redeeming qualities I will say about this, right? I do like that the women actually had different personalities.
Okay. It's based on a graphic novel, too.
Oh, really? I did not know this. Okay, so, From Hell came out 2001.
You have a problem when you like the other prostitutes, except for Heather Graham.
Heather Graham was just, goddamn, Heather Graham.
The hair color. Who thought that was a good idea?
Oh, what? No, see, the red of her hair matches the red that he saw in his dreams, so that's why.
Well, maybe they should have gotten another actress, because her with red hair did not work.
It washed her out.
No, I'm not even trying to sound superficial and flaky here. I'm literally telling you that she looked ridiculous with that color hair.
Oh, she looked ridiculous that, like, I'm so poor and everything, but she's like the cleanest looking person there ever.
Yeah. I mean, you know what scene I really liked though? I will confess I liked the other prostitutes. I thought that they did a good and realistic job. They were unattractive to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. But they were attractive enough, like, that you could understand that someone would want to sleep with them.
I loved how bored they were with their jobs.
Yeah. And I love, oh my God, there's this scene. There's two scenes that I want to talk to the guy. in an alleyway, and
Well,
they're against the fence.
Oh, God, the standing up sex scene. Yeah. Okay, can I tell you something and you won't laugh at me?
Well, wait, let me see.
Okay.
So they're having sex, and he's like, I'm not inside you. And she's like, yeah, you are. And he's like, don't give me a fucking break. I know that I'm not. And he pushes until he is. So I think that for some reason there's something about that scene that makes me laugh, the way that the two actors carry it out.
Mm-hmm.
There obviously was that game then where they pretended like they were, because he was like, I'm inside your thighs, that's it. And there's another scene I love where all the prostitutes, after, their night of working, are outside a public bath and washing their bodies and like for the day. And I think it's so depressing. But I love that scene because that was actually realistic.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about the scene.
I'm gonna sound so stupid and so naive, but From Hell is infamous to me because that's the first time I realized, oh, you can have sex standing up.
That's funny. And what's funny about it is they really weren't. Because she was faking him out. He was having sex with the inside of her thighs, and then she was like, he was like, yo, I'm paying you, bitch.
I know, but this was like eye-opening for child Rainey, going like, wait, but don't you have to like be lying down to have sex?
What year did this come out?
2001.
Oh my god. Really?
Yeah, so way before Johnny Depp fatigue set in.
First of all, just as a side note, what is Johnny Depp doing with himself? He looks terrible.
He looked bored.
In this movie, he looks bored, for sure.
I mean,
he looks like
he has the same expression on his face that he does in The Tourist with Angelina Jolie.
He was paying something off to be in this movie. He was like, I need the money for this, I'm going to do this movie, just to make money.
Probably.
It was just really, honestly, that ridiculous. And the guy who plays Hagrid was his assistant, so to speak, in the movie.
And Bilbo Baggins was in this movie.
You're obsessed with saying that name.
It is. It's Bilbo Baggins. Go on IMDb. The guy that plays the Doctor, Dr. Gull, right? Sir William Gull, is the same guy. Yes, he is Bilbo Baggins.
N-H-L-O-M.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm pissed about this movie because there's something about it that's watchable. It's not a good movie by any means, but it's a very good visual movie. That makes sense. Which makes sense if it's based off of a graphic novel.
Yeah, I was going to say, after you told me that it's based on a graphic novel, I can totally see why the visuals are amazing.
But it pisses me off because, and for those of you that haven't seen the movie, it follows it's a combination of two theories, that it's Freemasons and that it's also the royal family.
Or it's the combination of both that I told you about.
What do you mean?
William Gull working with the Freemasons and Queen Victoria to protect the monarchy.
Right, no, yeah. So the royal conspiracy and the Freemason conspiracy, which is ridiculous. Both of them are ridiculous. It was some creep who was, he worked as a medical assistant probably, or he was a butcher or something like that. And he did his first attack nearby where he lived or worked. And that's it. That's my thought. And it's interesting though, Patricia Cornwell, she spent something like $7 million. $7 million researching this. And she believes that the murder is Walter Sticker.
Yes, so in her book, Portrait of a Killer, Jack the Ripper, Case Closed, which was published just a year after the movie From Hell came out, this book was published in 2002. Mm-hmm. and Rita read the book. So just a quick profile. Patricia Cornwell is a crime novelist, and she says that she has solved this. So take it away, Rita. Tell me who William Sickert is, and what does Patricia Cornwell have to back this up?
So he was an English painter, and he was a printmaker. He was an important influence to Britain. He was a very artistic fellow, and he was a prominent figure in the transition from Impressionism to Modernism. He was honestly beloved. He was well known, and he was really successful and really talented. So, for some reason, he personally was very interested in Jack the Ripper, and he believed that he had actually shared a room or had been in a room that Jack the Ripper had also been in. He did a painting, as a matter of fact, entitled Jack the Ripper's Bedroom. And it's really dark and blurry and freaky, to be honest with you. In the 70s, Stephen Knight brought up the theory that he believed Sickert had been involved. And he believed that somehow, even if he wasn't Jack the Ripper himself, that he had been an accomplice. Later on, other people believed that he was the killer. Patricia Cornwall really felt that he was the killer because of her research. She said that he had some sort of deformity in his penis somehow, which would fit into the FBI analysis that there was some sort of physical deformity of some kind. She has actually bought a bunch of his paintings, and she's researched them. She's tried to get DNA from them. And she believes that there's a connection between his paintings, his DNA, and letters that were sent. I remember in particular, there was one part of her book that really convinced me at the time. She mentioned that Sickert was going to, and this is probably the room that I mentioned before, he was staying at some sort of hotel. And he did a vulgar drawing in the ledger. And because of the content of the drawing, it was like a specific drawing that related to one of the crimes. In a way, she felt like that was a big part of evidence that backed up her claim. I don't know. I think that Jack the Ripper wasn't an artist. There could be a claim that he was artistic because of the way that he represented the bodies, but I just don't think he was. I just don't think he was. So I think that Patricia Cornwell, and like I mentioned before, that figure, I'm not lying, she has spent upwards of $7 million researching this. And she destroyed one of his paintings, as a matter of fact, in order to find DNA. And these paintings are not cheap. I admire her. I understand her drive for this. But I don't know. I mean, I haven't read the book in a long time. I remember being very convinced when I read it. I would probably to read it again to really be swayed by her. And I know that she came out with another book a few years ago that goes more in detail about it. But I think that that's an interesting idea that an artist committed the crime. Because an artist might be, depending on the subject of their art, familiar with anatomy. And we certainly know that the crimes were performed with a certain level of precision.
And also the way the bodies were posed, there's like some melodramatic flair. There's
definitely a vision with it. And so, precision, we think of precision specifically with this because of its anatomy, with doctors, etc. But artists are precise. And they deal with blades. They deal with tools like that. So there's certainly something to it. It's hard to reconcile the crimes with this benign artist. But I do remember that I read the book and I found it very convincing.
Well, one thing I could also say, going back to the FBI profile, you know how the FBI profile said, like, this wasn't somebody who was, rich and everything? And I think an artist does occupy that liminal space in between the rich and the working class. I mean, in the 1800s, you would still need a patron, someone to, give you money and everything. And I do agree with Patricia Cornwell when she says a lot of people who study Jack the Ripper love the mystery more than they want answers. And I do admit that I can see that.
There's a fact that she brings up. There's a deformity with his penis. There's a congenital disorder.
Yeah, she knows her research.
Right, affects his penis, and that really relates to the FBI profile that they said that there would be some sort of deformity that to him was like the end of the world.
Yeah, and anything that threatens a man's penis is always the end of the world.
Exactly.
And I do agree with Patricia Cornwell saying that most people don't really want this solved. I mean, there's that tourist trade based on Jack the Ripper, the Ripper Walk, right?
I often want it solved.
There's fan sites. Yes, I know we want it solved, but it's one of those great unsolved mysteries, like what happened to the Lindbergh baby, or Amelia Earhart, or where's Jimmy Hoffa's body?
Yeah. I know. And there's something to that this is so famous all through these years. And
is Ted Cruz the Zodiac Killer is not going to have the same place in my heart as Jack the Ripper. I'll tell you that.
I want to talk about the Zodiac Killer in another podcast.
I want to talk about H.H. Holmes in another podcast.
Oh, Jesus Christ. That would be like 10 podcasts. There's just so much to talk about. But I think that I subscribe to the FBI report. I think that this dude was a loner. I think that he couldn't address women.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he had a personal deformity, perhaps to his penis. He had some sort of dick deformity, a DD, like they call it in the professional world. And it would make sense that he would strike these people, particularly in Victorian England, who represented sexuality, lust, want, things that maybe he felt he couldn't freely participate in because of perhaps, his social standing or the deformity that he had. And so that was his strike back. And also that FBI report mentioned that he probably had a domineering mother that spent a lot of time in the company of men and drank. So prostitutes, we know, more often than not, were big alcoholics that used their trade to fund their addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And probably served as this sort of symbol or example of what his mother was like, and he lashed out. And it's funny because that goes against everything that I used to think about Jack the Ripper. I thought he was this clever gentleman, like I said before. I don't think that's true. I think we think clever gentleman because these crimes, for lack of a better word, seemed clever. They seemed systematic. They seemed planned. They seemed precise. This person, in spite of these very involved crimes committed in the public, could not be caught. He was killing these women out in the open.
Displaying their bodies.
being very involved with the body, and nobody saw.
I mean, when you say it like that, it does sound, like, oh my God, he has to be a genius to do this. Until you take everything into account, just how crowded and, like, teeming with poor people, with death, and, I mean, I could imagine that there were a lot of people moving and transporting dead bodies over there. Like, yeah, of course, and it wouldn't make anyone suspicious. At the same time, these people were probably, starving and hungry, and, you're worried about where your next meal gonna be. You're not gonna care what some weirdo next to you is doing with a sack.
I just think it's so crazy that, for at least with the amount of victims that we know now, that there weren't more eyewitness accounts. That whoever he was, wasn't connected enough with the world that someone saw something suspicious enough to report it. He didn't live with or near someone who saw his habits. He didn't confess it to anyone. He didn't allude it to anyone. Because if he did, I do believe that they would have come forward, and I don't think it would have just been one person he confided in. I think he probably would have mentioned it to multiple people. So I just really find it so psycho that after all of this time, we're left speculating. And and the problem is, also with this case, is that we're left speculating over so little. I mean, we have the details of the crimes, and they're horrible, and that's what I think piques our interest. But at the end of the day, we really have very little to go on.
It is really sad that this is what we have.
So little. We just have the accounts of the crimes, and that's really it. At the end of the day, like the non-contestable facts are the accounts of the crimes and the crime scenes, and that's it. Then we have Johnny Depp as a clairvoyant drug addict as Abberline, which is so ridiculous when we go off of the description of him as an inspector earlier. So I would love to know what led them to determine, yeah, he's a drug addict. We're going to have to addict to opium, and he's going to, die at the end of the movie. It's ridiculous. I don't care that I spoiled it for anyone either. Yeah, give me a break. He dies at the end, and Heather Graham goes on to live, and it's ridiculous.
Oh, with the baby.
There's no development of their relationship either.
No. And I'm kind of happy that they didn't.
Yeah, but that's the thing. There's no buy-in to what happens at the end because they never. So listen, this is the thing, right? Like, movies want to seem different and cool if they don't go into a romantic story from how it was trying to accomplish. However, they forced an attraction between Johnny Depp's character and Heather Graham's character.
I've seen more chemistry between two wet carrots.
I've seen more chemistry in, like, South Park.
I will still say a better love story than Edward and Bella.
Have we talked about Twilight yet?
No, and I think that should be upcoming.
Should that be next?
Definitely, because I know I want to talk about the infamous E.L. James original draft of 50 Shades of Grey. I'm sorry, Rita, you're just going to have to go down that rabbit hole with me.
I want to talk about the ex-Mormon who does a whole analysis of the book series through the eyes of a Mormon.
Yes.
Which Stephanie Meyer was.
Okay. Yes, we definitely need to talk about Twilight. We need to talk about
next. And you know what? Because it took us so long to record this, most because of my ridiculous life, maybe we can record the next one fairly soon.
Definitely.
Like A&E's series on, oh my God, what's his name? I just thought Scott Peterson. killed, was convicted of killing his wife, Laci Peterson, who was pregnant at the time. And, goes into media and how crazy the media was at the time. I think the media is still psycho when it comes, think about Casey Anthony, O.J. Simpson, Michael Jackson, all those cases.
Rita, do we need to talk about the Laci Peterson murder? Because, I am in California.
Dude, I would love to talk about Laci Peterson's murder. I followed it, real time when it was happening, the whole investigation, and I am watching the series that's on A&E right now. They're reflecting back on it, though I'm pissed because the show is very sympathetic to Scott.
Ugh.
Which is psychology, and I love everything that goes behind it. I love talking about it because it's so interesting and it's so disturbing, and I want to understand it. And I think that we're still talking about it because it wasn't solved. And it's crazy to think that in those conditions, those horrendous murders weren't seen or found by other people. And I think that we just can't fathom that. What do you think?
Oh, I got brought into this because of you. I lived in blissful ignorance. I don't know how, but I lived in blissful ignorance that there was such a thing as ripperologists. I learned a new word. Yes, I learned that there was Jack the Ripper midnight walks. Why the hell would you do that? And I did not know that there was actually William Sickert and his gross paintings. Two that I saw where he fetishizes Jack the Ripper. So I have no idea. I really don't. But at the same time, how could I be obsessed about H.H. Holmes and not Jack the Ripper? How could I have stayed at the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast and yet be grossed out by Jack the Ripper walk? So I don't know. I learned so much more about myself. With each podcast, Rita, you make me do self-reflection.
It's my job.
Okay, so I'm Rainey. She's Rita. This is the Underbelly. Thank you so much for listening to us.
Definitely is the Underbelly, especially after this episode.
Oh yeah, where we
and read the things so you don't have to.
Where we look at the questionable side of pop culture. Thank you so much. And
Thank you for listening.
Let's listen to a little bit of Jack the Ripper as we play out.
I'm trying to play a dramatic scene with this lady. Lady? What? Don't you know what a lady really does for a living? Is she selling what's happening tasting on the corner of the street? We give you a clue by saying she's expensive, and her time is divided between on and off her feet.